Circle is a magic place, a ring that is unbroken, a comic and a tragic space.
We gather in our sacred space.
Once more we find
A circle of women from diverse backgrounds,
seeking to share experiences and feelings safely and confidentially.
Each woman who wishes to speak may do so without judgment or interruption.
Our intention is to listen and support each other.
And only offer advice if it is requested. Hey girls, before we officially start our monthly meeting of our Women's Circle, I thought I'd give you a little update about the feminazis from the Bronx.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this. What did you decide to do, Pat?
Actually, Leslie, I decided to take your advice and take the path of least resistance. I'm just doing my work with the Brooklyn gals who know that a trans woman is indeed a woman and calling it good.
That's great, Pat. I'm glad you found support beyond our circle.
Thanks, Jean. Now I think we can officially get started. We gather together in our sacred space, a circle of women with diverse backgrounds, seeking to share experiences and feelings safely and confidentially. Each woman who wishes to speak may do so without judgment or interruption. Our intention is to listen and support each other and only offer advice if requested. Jean suggested this month's topic. Would you tell the group, please?
Sure, thanks, Pat. I mentioned at last month's circle that I went to a medical conference where it became glaringly apparent to me that misogyny is alive and well in the medical community. When I got back to our practice, it really started gnawing at me, and I began to recognize how ingrained it is. Honestly, even in myself. So this month's topic is, how do we confront and change medical misogyny or any other institutions with systemic biases? It's not just that women's voices are not being heard, but it's especially difficult in the medical field because it can be a matter of life or death.
That's a great topic, Jean, but really, I can't possibly imagine that you have misogynistic biases.
Well, let me just start out with this little riddle. It goes like this. A father and his son are in a car accident. The father dies instantly, and the son is taken to the nearest hospital. The doctor comes in and exclaims, "I can't operate on this boy." "Why not?" the nurse asks. "Because he's my son," the doctor responds. How is this possible?
maybe it's his stepfather.
No, but you're proving my point.
He's adopted, and this is his birth father.
But the kid is not my son.
We give up, Jean. What's the answer?
Oh, Jean, I'll take misogyny in medicine for 300.
The reason why the surgeon cannot operate on that boy.
What if the surgeon is the boy's mother?
Ah, correct. You see how most of our minds automatically assume the surgeon was a man?
Wow, I can't believe I fell into that trap. You're right, Jean, misogynistic biases run deep.
Right, and just so you don't feel bad, the majority of the people at the medical conference also assumed the surgeon was a man. This stuff runs deep, Jamie, even when presented with the facts. I'm so glad we got a separate session at this conference just for nurse practitioners. The statistics are devastating.
You can't always believe statistics. Black women and children get the same care as white people do in my practice.
Absolutely. Same where I work. We treat everyone with respect.
Yeah, my experience wasn't so good, as you can tell.
That's horrible, Jean. Our medical system is so screwed up.
It really is. So many people are neglected or ignored, suffering and even dying unnecessarily. I follow an online group for people who are chronically ill and or disabled. Every single day, I read so many stories of neglect and not being believed. One woman who has chronic fatigue syndrome and some other invisible disabilities talked about how she parked in an accessible parking space, and someone yelled at her, "You don't look disabled, so is that even your car?"
That's awful. And it happens all over the world, too. Did you see Spoonie Theater's YouTube production of It Started with an Allergy by Heather Morrow? Well, she's based in Canada and had some of her medical journey while in Scotland.
I didn't see that one. Tell us about it, Leslie.
In a nutshell, this woman suffered for 10 years before any doctor took her seriously. She was in excruciating pain and was told it was all in her head for years. Eventually, she was diagnosed with endometriosis. But it just goes to show how women are often told it's all in your head.
I'm gonna have to look that one up, Leslie. But I did see the Spoonie Theater production of Barren Landscape, which took on the topic of Alzheimer's disease. But this one that you've described sounds really important as well.
Speaking of Alzheimer's disease, Jean, could you tell me how much genetics play into developing it? I'm asking because my maternal grandmother had it and my maternal grandfather has some sort of dementia.
Well, Pat, genetics play a role in predisposition. However, current research really shows us that environment and lifestyle play a significant role. Epigenetics looks at how those genes are affected by external factors, and most experts agree that their influence accounts for about 80% of developing a disease for which you are genetically predisposed. What we consume, what we're exposed to, exercise, sleep, and other lifestyle factors really are the true predictors of disease.
Thanks for explaining that, Jean. I feel much better now. I think I lead a pretty healthy lifestyle.
I'm glad to hear that too, because years and years ago, my cousin Joan, she found a lump in her breast. She was only 28. When she went to the doctor, he told her she was too young to have breast cancer. Symptoms persisted and they got worse, and she finally got someone to take her seriously. A year later, they finally did a mammogram, and by then she had stage 4 breast cancer. She died a few days after turning 29. And I can tell you this happens at our medical facility as well.
That is so sad, Jamie. I'm so sorry for your loss.
It haunts me to this day. I just know in my gut that if that first doctor had taken Joan seriously, she'd still be alive today. Damn him.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Jamie. You know, when Jean talked about the medical conference that she went to and how Black people, especially women, are marginalized, it reminded me of my childhood friend, Yvonne. It was my first experience with death of a friend. She was about 8 years old. We lived in a poor section of Brooklyn, and she was Black. And she had some type of breathing issue, and when she died, I just knew it was because she was a poor Black girl.
It's too bad she didn't have an advocate or something.
Well, you know, that might not have even made a difference. I remember reading a story about a Black woman who took her daughter to the ER. The mother knew exactly what was going on with her child, but the staff completely ignored her and sent her home. They told her not to worry about it. She died a few days later from something that could have been treated, simply for being a Black woman and therefore invisible.
Wow, just how sad and unnecessary. I just can't imagine allowing our children to get so neglected by our systems. We constantly fail them in the medical system, the education system, and so many other areas.
Wow, Pat. Your story reminded me of Mrs. Jacobs. She was a widow and lived down the block from us. Without a husband who worked, she had no medical insurance. She found herself in excruciating pain. The other symptoms began to appear, and she knew something was seriously wrong, but she couldn't see a doctor. So, desperate, she decided to go to extreme measures and went as far as drinking bleach so that she could end up in the emergency room. They finally ran a battery of tests and found out that she did, in fact, have end-stage terminal cancer.
Terrible. Terrible. And even if someone has insurance, there's no guarantee they'll get proper treatment, especially if you're disabled. Oh, our medical system sucks, and Jean and Jamie and I are part of it. That's a heavy load.
I'm so grateful that you are. It's nice to know that we have somebody in our corner. We have to stand up for each other. How did we make everything so complicated? It's hard enough just being human.
I am woman, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore.
Damn right. Women power.
Exactly. And that's why I've been spending so much time thinking about how to shift the culture at our medical practice.
Tell me more, we can put up a fight.
Well, Jamie, as you know, is our office manager. She and I have been talking about starting a monthly newsletter that would have resources and articles for marginalized women. We also thought we could, put in data, research, statistics to possibly make the doctors and staff more aware of biases.
Yes, and since the doctors are going to have to approve each newsletter, at least one of them will have to read it carefully.
That seems like a great way to at least try and uncover it and address biases within your practice. It's all about bringing awareness, I guess. I mean, until Jean told us that riddle, I would have thought that there were no biases in the medical profession, especially among those of us who voice concern, for the marginalized.
When it comes to women, our voices are often silenced or overlooked. I had a friend in high school who suffered terribly with IBS issues. The first time she went to the doctor, they just poo-pooed her. And then, what? Seriously,
Okay.
They told her to take laxatives. Of course, that didn't help her. Then her father suggested that in order to be heard, maybe she needed to over-exaggerate her symptoms.
Did it work?
Well, the laxatives certainly didn't work. They made her dehydrated, which just gave her severe headaches and dizziness on top of everything else. The over-exaggeration is what did the trick. When she told them that she was failing classes due to the amount of time she was spending in the bathroom, they finally took her seriously and ran some tests.
Isn't it just amazing what it takes for a woman to be taken seriously?
Especially women of color.
Right? Well, I read a study that said that as recently as 2012, 40% of first and second year medical students endorsed the belief that Black people's skin is thicker than white people's in regards to feeling pain. And even today, Black people are less likely to be given pain medication when they do. It's at a lower dose and when it's compared to white people.
That is just ridiculous. It's as crazy as thinking that outlawing abortion will mean that abortions won't happen. I mean, research has shown that women die from illegal abortions more than legal ones. And in addition, there are long-lasting health issues, and some women may never even be able to have children in the future.
Choice is so important. So we are proactively educating our patients who are 15 years and older that they're able to purchase the morning after pill in case of an emergency. We even have a list of websites where it can be ordered from in case they feel intimidated to get it from their local pharmacy.
They can also go to Planned Parenthood to get it. They do so much more than abortions. That's just a small part of it. Birth control and women's health are what they primarily do. It just pisses me off that people just don't get what Planned Parenthood really does. I had a friend who, when she was 16, she went to get birth control, and they did an internal exam and found she had a tumor. If she hadn't gone, they wouldn't have found it. And she wouldn't have gone to her family doctor since she didn't want her parents to know. Luckily, it wasn't cancerous, but damn it, Planned Parenthood does a lot more than kill babies.
No. I wish I could change the culture in our practice. I mean, the newsletter is a start, but I wish I could be more direct, especially with our male doctors. Maybe I could get them to do some trainings on subconscious biases and treatment of patients.
Gee, those all sound like good ideas, but I think it's time for our official circle is over. Of course, anyone who wants to stay and talk more is welcome to. Our circle of women is always stronger than the patriarchy. May we all leave here with renewed strength and purpose.
What should I do? Should I just be satisfied with the newsletter and patient education we're putting out there? Should I be more direct with the doctors and point out when they are treating patients with bias? Or should I arrange for a full staff training regarding unconscious bias? You decide. Voting information and links are below in the description. Watch for the next episode of A Circle of Women based on your votes. And be sure to subscribe to the Spoonie Theater YouTube channel so you never miss an episode.
A circle is a magic place, a ring that is unbroken. A comic and a tragic space, depending on what's spoken. Once more we find ourselves inside, we're looking and we're seeking. We're brave because we shall not hide, as each her truth is speaking. And each one speaks the truth she lives, now softly we each thank her. No judgment, only praise we give, we feel no need to rank her. Our circle is a gift we share, each sister now who's for us. And every voice is full of care, and each one joins our chorus.